Fleeing America for Russia. Welcome to Expat American. I am the Expat American, Joseph Stephen Rose. And in this long form content, I'm going to be talking to another American who also now lives in Moscow. And as you know from the title, has fled from America to Russia. So we're going to find out what that means. Am I being truthful? Am I exaggerating? And I'm going to bring this guy on in just a second. But before I do, I have a clip of him that I want to share with you of him in Moscow, just to give you some flavor, some context as of who this guy is.
Anybody remember watching a movie called oh wow, I literally just had it and I literally just lost it. The Quiet Man with John Wayne. Anybody remember that movie?
I do.
Yeah?
It's awesome.
Yeah. They sung this song in the movie, and it was interesting because it's a song that was written on Australia. And I sing it oftentimes for my wife, for memories back home. My wife is from Australia. I guess I should have led with that part. But this is from the movie. Well, long before the movie. There was a wild, colonial boy, Jack Duncan was his name. He was born and raised in Ireland, in a place called Castlemaine. He was his father's only son, his mother's pride and joy.
So, as you can see, in case you did not know, Moscow is an international place. And yes, you can go to a nightclub and someone will sing Irish tunes to you in English. And this someone is Joe, who is with us right now. And this clip that I showed you has nothing to do with the conversation I'm going to have with him. I just wanted to show you that he's a real person and he's complex, as we all are. And Joe is also my name, but I usually go by Joseph, and I'm glad to see that he typed in Joe, so this is not as confusing as I thought it might be. But Joe, go ahead and say hello to the audience and tell us who you are in relation to this topic or just in general.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, first of all, Joseph, for having me on. It's really a great pleasure. Of course, I saw so many of your videos before I myself moved to Russia. But you're definitely one of the more influencing American podcasts, or actually, I think it is the most influencing American one out of all the ones that I watched. So got to get a good idea of Russia before he came here. But as far as who I am a father of 6 kids. Number 7 is on the way, our first natural-born Russian child. So we moved from the state of Kansas to Russia in towards the end of last year, September-ish, and moved to Russia. And yeah, we're just getting. I think we are officially settled in at this point in time on the west side of Moscow.
Now, I have a follow-up question to that. You said you're first natural-born Russian. But you are not yet Russian, and neither is your wife. So how does that work for Westerners that are watching and thinking of immigrating here and maybe having kids? Will your child automatically become Russian, or do you have to do something, the one that will be born here?
A very, very good question. So it's not like going to South America and you just get citizenship for having a baby there. The baby will have, of course, a Russian birth certificate, but it will he would not be a citizen automatically. We would be able to apply for his citizenship. Once he becomes a citizen, that facilitates our current process that we are in to become citizens as well. But it does not give us a I guess you would say de facto citizenship, just waiting for some process. We're already in our process, but that will take us the last mile through, a 2-year-ish process from landing to being citizens.
So having birth child in Russia will help your citizenship journey, or no?
It will. I think it used to be a lot more helpful, but it will. It's just it is helpful, but it is not this quick and easy method by which some people used to come into Russia. Is my understanding.
And did you say you guys came in here from Kansas? Is that what I heard?
Kansas, yes. I'm from Texas originally, but my wife is from Australia. But we've been married for 8 years. We just celebrated our eighth wedding anniversary in November. And we lived most recently in the state of Kansas, a little cow town in cornfield in Kansas, filled with a bunch of traditional Catholics like myself. That's my religious background, and so is my wife's. And then we left there to come to Moscow.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I muted my mic for a second. Some of you may have noticed I was coughing. Yes, I got sick this week. People do get sick in Russia. Do people get sick in your country? Perhaps Russia is more like your country than you thought. So you're from Texas, she's from Australia, but you live together in Kansas.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Missouri and
And you
Kansas, but Kansas most recently.
and there you have been serious practicing Catholics. Yes?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Traditional Catholics, I know people nowadays are throwing traditional around as a pretty generic term. But for us inside of Catholicism, it does mean something a little bit more narrow. We are a segment of the Catholic population, a very small segment, but a growing segment of in Catholicism that attends a mass that is still in Latin, like it was said for 2,000 years. And that's our tradition that we have sought to protect. We're kind of in an interesting situation we found ourselves in, wherein our Pope hates us, as well as the federal government does not like us also. I don't know if people back in the States remember a scandal from last year. I think it was about June, and it went for some time before that, wherein the FBI had leaked documents that they were targeting traditional Catholics, investigating traditional Catholics as domestic terrorists, because we're very violent people. We just, we're have big families, and we had just run out there and start running amok, causing such problems for the government. Now, of course, we're a very peaceful, group of people. We have large families. We are very conservative. Maybe that's the problem. It doesn't seem to be very popular in the U.S. today. It's not so cool, I guess you'd say.
Okay, well then we're already getting into my next question, which is why did you leave America? And I think what you said that intrigues me is that not only does DC not like you, the Pope also doesn't like you, and that you are being called potentially terrorists, or your Catholic group is by DC. And if you are an agnostic person, which many people watching are, your knowledge of the Catholic Church might be it's old, it's traditional, and also there's been some scandals in the news in your lifetime. But to say it's a terrorist group, I think that makes anyone laugh, even an agnostic person who doesn't really keep up with religion too deeply. So that sounds crazy to me. Why do you think they're reaching this far with that title?
Um, well, I guess being a religious person, I have a very strong sense that there's a lot more that's going on in this world than what meets the eye. So
Mhm.
I don't know if the agnostics are supposed to plug their ears about right now, but with regards to my faith, I believe in a spiritual realm in which there is an active war that's going on between good and evil. And as
Uh-huh.
far as the material manifestation of that is concerned, the West right now has turned against these traditional principles, and those are manifested in many ways. And I guess in a certain sense, it's reasonable for them to take this position because we are ideological enemies of the left in the West, right? So all these leftist ideas that are anti-Christian, that are anti-traditional values, we stand for those, and we that them and us, it's antithetical. So, in a certain extent, if people want to laugh at the spiritual realm, but apparently we don't want to laugh at the thought realms. These words that we say out loud and these ideas that float around in our heads are somehow real, even if the spiritual isn't real. So, in a thought war, we are, I guess you would say, the enemies of the West in that regard. So we don't respect the Constitution as Americans anymore, even, and the idea of free speech, which is of course a rabbit hole that I will try not to go down. But I think the funniest thing that I hear from people back in America is ask the question, does Russia have free speech? Well, I think that I'm more freely able to express myself in Russia than I am in America. I'm not allowed to say what I think out loud, even if the left is allowed to say what they think out loud when you're at work, when you're on conference calls, etc. And so, I mean, in a sense, they're being honest about what it is, who we are to the federal government, who we are to the left in the West. So,
Okay. All right. So we need to definitely dig into this and find out more details. But just to be clear, you're talking about your Catholic denomination, not specifically you guys. And is this how widespread is this group that you feel like is being targeted by DC and that the Pope doesn't like? Like how many people in what parts of the world?
sure. So, as far as who DC is targeting, I don't know if they're targeting much outside of their own population, but there are traditional Catholics all around the world. So, if we take this from just a strictly religious sense,
Hmm.
traditional Catholics exist around the world. They have the Mass in Latin. We have traditional beliefs. We have tendency for larger families, much larger families. For example, I'm the oldest of 12. My wife is the number 4 of 13.
Hmm.
And my mom was one of 13. So it's just like very standard for us. Um,
Wow.
so yeah,
Incredible, man. I
yeah,
love it.
yeah.
My only concern with that is I wonder how well can you know each of your children if you have 10 plus kids? Because I have 5, and I feel like I know them all pretty well. If I had more, I would start to be pushing the limit of how much time I have to deeply know them. So,
Well, my mom used to say something that was very strange to me the first time she told it to me. But she watched this poor woman in the grocery store struggling one day with 2 of her children, and she was just really having a time of it. They must have been 2 or 3 years apart, and she just shook her head and she said, I have so much respect for people that have less than 6 children. I said, okay, we should respect everybody, Mom, but why are you saying that? That's a very strange thing for you to say as a mother of 12. And she said, oh, because it was hell before we had 6 children, because you start building your own society at that point in time inside the home. So whereas there's so much busy work that's involved with taking of childcare, just actual childcare, the children begin to build their own society with you and your wife, or you and your husband,
wow.
depending on. And so you actually get to spend a lot of time with each of the individual children and with the children collectively, and being able to see them interact. So it changes the dynamic tremendously, I guess you'd say, when
Wow,
you get
that's
used to
very
that.
interesting. This is something I've never heard before. I like it. If it's true, I love it. And if you're living in a country with a low birth rate, take this idea and run with it and speak about it at your next town hall and convince people. I think it'd be really great. Get to
There you
15
go.
kids or more, all of you, and change the world. But seriously, I mean, that sounds like a very intriguing idea. Um, yeah, wow. I can see how that might be the case. Very, very cool. Okay, so why is the Pope not like you guys? Not you specifically, but your group of Catholics. And
Well,
is this the Latin Mass speaking Catholics? in general, if we were to generalize, or is this a different thing?
No, I think people have a pretty good idea of what Catholics are like in the very broad sense, right? People, or at
Yeah,
least people
but as
have their
far as
opinion.
the group that DC is DC just targeting all Catholics in general, or a certain
No,
Catholic group that you're a part of?
for certain Catholic group that we were part of, right? We would just say so. The short version of this story is that in the '60s, the church had this desire to, or the church hierarchy at the time wanted this modernization of theology to keep up with the times. You know, the
Mhm.
revolutions that
Yeah,
were
for
going
sure.
on in the '60s and such, right? And so they thought to survive, we had to modernize. Um,
Mhm.
that you know we there's so much of the world that is beyond or just besides religion that exists that people can feel like they're being hip and new about, but faith is something that's about tradition, and it's about what has been handed down to us because it's the truth and we want to maintain that truth as closely as possible. I think all of us, at least principally, Catholics, Protestants, Orthodox alike, we are seeking to preserve what Christ actually said to us, what his desires were for us to continue, etc. Not to come up with some new ideas about what he was actually talking about,
Mhm.
but to actually just build on that idea. So with regards to the Catholic Church, they had this revolution where they made up a new mass and kind of threw the old one away. And there was a few men that existed at the time, Catholic bishops, just a few, and cardinals that said, "We'll keep this. Thank you very much." Pulled it, held on to it as tightly as he could and moved forward. And what has begun to happen as time goes by, these younger people are searching for something that is original. And what is old has now clearly become original again. the full cycle has gone through. And so now all these young people are getting attracted to this Latin Mass. And Pope Francis is more on the liberal side of things, as we can see in the news. And there's really not a nice way to put it, so I'm not going to dive into it. But we all know what Pope Francis is about, and we are literally against all of that because we believe that the Catholic faith is antithetical to these newfangled ideas, politically, gender-wise, whatever that is. Um,
So
we are
you're
still
saying that because I don't keep up with this stuff, I'm not Catholic. You're
sure.
saying that the current pope is not for traditional family values, it appears.
No, no. In fact, he likes to mock us in public quite frequently. As an example, one of his first famous comments after he became Pope was being Catholic doesn't mean breeding like rabbits, in reference to traditional Catholics. So, again, in America, I was used to, that kind of mockery coming in the grocery store or something like that, walking around with your kids. Definitely not from the Pope. That was a first.
Now, in the grocery store, how do people even know that you're Catholic?
Oh no, I mean walking around with a bunch of kids.
Just it's
Yeah,
looked down upon that you have too many kids.
right.
Okay.
But now even our own Pope looks down upon this, and it's not easy having a large family. We don't have a large family because it's the most comfortable thing in the world. Takes a lot of sacrifice, takes a lot of discipline to do. But yeah, to be mocked by your own Pope for that, that was a new one.
That's crazy, man. I'm really sorry. When did traditional Catholics break off from the Pope?
So there are some Catholics who created a formal schism in the, I guess you'd say, the religious technicality of this. We do not consider ourselves broken off from the Pope. The Pope, this is going to sound very weird, but with regards to formal schism, that is not certainly my family's beliefs are anybody that I am related to in that regard. However, we do not believe, contrary to what many people perhaps might think, that are Protestant or Orthodox, we don't believe that whatever comes out of the Pope's mouth is the truth, and that he can be criticized for what he says, especially when it's a lie. So we don't believe in papal infallibility at all costs, or that we can pick and choose with that. There's a criteria by which we can discern that. But clearly things that are just openly against the truth, he's wrong. I don't envy being in his position before God when we go to the next life, what he has done to so many of his flock. So, yeah, it's we don't consider ourselves broken off, but we will call it civil disobedience, for lack of a better term. That this is our mass. This is the mass of the ages. And he does not have the right to take it away from us.
Okay, well then let's kind of reframe this for the title and for people that are interested in Russia, because that's most of our viewers, whether they are Russians that are looking at the West and wondering who's coming over here, and also Westerners that are looking at Russia and thinking, do I want to come over there? You are an American, you're a Catholic, you've married an Australian woman, you're having lots of kids, you're living in Kansas having a beautiful time, just like Superman. And tell us then what has taken you from there to here, living in Moscow. Like, what are the steps? What are the revelations? What were the pieces that fell into place where you started to say to yourself, oh, snap, what is going on here? Oh, man, I'm going to run. Oh, my gosh, now I'm in another country.
Yeah. No, there were several things that contributed to this, obviously, and in America, I think that people who have their heads screwed on straight have known that things have been going down the tubes for quite some time in America. There are different definitions of that, but things have certainly become worse. It seems, like the only the other day that we were talking about Target and bathrooms, and that was quite some years ago, and everybody seems to have moved on from that since then. But yeah, we certainly knew that there were problems, but I think when COVID thing came out and everybody was, determining whether or not they were going to follow rules, not follow rules, put these things on, don't put them on, whatever it is, I think.
Wait, you mean that giant medical event that the algorithm would rather us not be specific about? Yes.
Yes, that one.
But even with that, Joe, it's interesting because you're right. Like, you and I cannot fully speak. We have to speak in code with things. We are not completely free when it comes to the West because we are on a Western platform. And that's just another thing to your point of what you said earlier. But go ahead, go on.
No, just to that, yes, I can't. I love being on this live stream with you, but I really can't wait to get back off of it so I can speak like a normal human being as opposed to a stilted American.
I do this so much that I find myself talking in private with people in code for no reason. I'm just programmed, and you wake me up in my sleep after 2 beers, and I'll say traditional family values. Yeah, the neighboring country. I won't break, man. I won't say the wrong thing.
Oh, that's fantastic. No, we were. Oh, yeah. So, with regards to this event that happened several years ago, I think we really got to see what people are going to do, how people are going to act when all of this actually goes sideways. We know that these events have happened throughout history. We know that they're going to happen again. We don't know when they're going to happen again, but something like the recent unpleasantness 3 years ago, we really got to see the people who are ready to, at all cost, follow the system and take this great pride in following the rules of this, and we made up these laws, or not even laws, guidelines, mandates, whatever it may be. People are so excited to follow somebody that's actually telling them what to do. They're ready to be robots. A great example of that was I stopped taking my kids to the grocery store for 2 years until we moved back out to the country because we were in the city at the time. And this guy came out and wanted to fight me in the store while I'm holding my 2-year-old's hand. People, that sort of stuff doesn't happen here. People in Russia, I've learned, treat children as gold. There's a human respect layer that exists between normal people that you interact with on the street. Not any of this wild craziness about how we treat each other back in the States, especially when we're under pressure. So that was definitely extremely scary. We moved out to the country for that. We loved where we were living in this idyllic cornfield of Kansas. But even at that, and we were living amongst our own, people of our own faith. They're very like-minded people, very many good friends living there. And even then, we were realizing that this is the best place to live in America, and yet it is in America, and yet it is being dragged along by the left. It's at the very tail. It's at the very back of it, but it's still ever so slowly things are tendentially falling into place. And we just, my wife and I, thinking about this, we have to be part of a system. We got to be part of a people, part of a tribe that is focused on going the other direction in a meaningful way. I don't mean this like that religion isn't meaningful. That is meaningful. We must pray. We must make sacrifices, all these things for our own good and those good of our country. But we've got to start on making some real efforts that with a country, getting behind a country that is actually driving the other way. Other people can, stay behind and fight, whatever that means. I don't mean that in an insulting way whatsoever, but I do question what it is to fight this evil in this world today and what the most effective way to do that is. And this is the path that we chose.
Well, I think that's probably because you are framing things with you're looking at things through the Christian lens, And I think for someone who looks at things as an American lens, let's say you're agnostic but you're a proud American, you're not going to understand us, you and I, because you're going to say, why would they do that? My phone flashed with a YouTube like something new on YouTube, and it was the word traitor. And I thought to myself for a second when I saw it, I thought, oh wow, it must be some new movie trailer called Traitor. That sounds cool. I want to see that. And I opened it up, and it was not. It was someone leaving a comment, and that was their one word to me, traitor. And it is something that I'm conflicted about, because I was raised to be a proud American, and I love the idea of America, and I do want America to get better. But I think, sorry to offend some people, I'm a Christian first. And so with that framework, if I see a quote Christian country, and hopefully that is what I see, and hopefully that is where I am, that is leaning towards God and trying to, better follow, God, then where am I going to raise my kids? Well, obviously I would want to raise my kids in that place and not the place that is actively trying to do the opposite. So
well said, sir.
Yeah.
Well said. No, it is a different, there are different categories of people, right? When you want to talk about fighting. There's single people, there are older single people, there are married people, and then, there's old people, grandparents and whatnot, right? This is a very serious inflection point for the world right now. Mm-hmm. Think about this, and now I don't mean in the great globalist whatever, but just a all the people that God created on this earth. This is a huge inflection point for us. And I've had the same people tell me the same thing before. You're a traitor, I'm don't know about anybody else, but my responsibility before anybody else, before my country, are my own children. Though that's what's most important to me. My wife and my children. And my children are these blank canvases. And they are going to grow up, and I'm going to paint on these canvases with them and show them these beautiful things and show them those things and educate them on these things. And whatever else they come into contact with the world, that's going to get painted on there too. Whatever they begin to imbibe, whatever they're going to eat, whatever they're going to see, that all becomes part of that canvas that God is taking a look at, and what makes that person. And I remember my people coming to my dad and saying, you're homeschooling 12 children. How do you expect that they're all going to be, well-adjusted, contributors to, America? And my father was like, I don't know what you're talking about. These are the most well-adjusted kids. You just said so, just a moment ago about how wonderful these children are. But you don't think that they're socially adjusted? No, we were like very well-adjusted people, but now we're living, 20, 30 years after this period of time when America was not nearly as bad as it is now. And still, and it's still considered to be normal what we're living with in America, right? What I was living in America with. That's not normal. What's going on right now? That is not normal. Anybody can say it, whatever, as much as they want, or you got to meet people where they are, or however that is. I'm sorry, but that's not for my kids. It's not for my kids. There is a normal life that is here. There are normal people that live here. There are people who get normal human activity, the way things are supposed to be, how we've lived for thousands upon thousands of years. That's normal to me. That's where my children have a chance to grow up and be exposed to the world. I don't need to expose them to all this garbage that is completely gone off the edge. We can call it being a traitor. I'm proud to be a traitor if that's in fact what that word now means. We've taken a ton of other words and changed their meanings of it. Fine, if that's what it is because I care about my children more than I care about the country I was born in. Absolutely, every time.
Now, I know that some people are going to comment, so he's sheltering his children. What would you say to that?
I am absolutely sheltering my children. I don't know when that all of a sudden became like a bad thing. People like think that, homeschoolers, they have like closets numbered 1 through 12, and there's a kid in each closet. And basically when they're 18, we just open the door and kick them out of the house. Like, come on. No, you shelter your children. People think, oh, well, we got to expose them to everything. Yeah, that's when you give your kid a phone, you expose them to everything. How does that work out for everybody? Does everybody think that they're well-adjusted people? They've been able to go look at, pornography. They've been able to go look at, news about what's going on in the world. People are like, yeah, I don't know why kids are so depressed nowadays. Are you kidding me? Like these children have not had the opportunity in this life to just appreciate the beauty of human life and living in the world without all this extra pressure being upon them about they've got to make a decision about, well, whether or not they're this or that, or something in between in the spectrum of things. I've got to, believe whether or not, it's okay to have abortion. It's, whatever it is, like you just throw these children, cast these children into these swamps of decision making that is for adults to even deal with. I would argue that most of us shouldn't have to deal with a quarter of the decisions that exist out there anymore. Just live life as a human, God-fearing person. I mean, that really kind of narrows the spectrum of decision making and things that are possibilities for me to do. But I am absolutely 100% sheltering my children. My parents sheltered me, and I was very, very grateful to be sheltered, to have a firm grounding in who I am as a Christian, as a child of God, and to understand my faith first before everybody started going out into before I went out into the world and everybody started questioning my faith. So,
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely, definitely sheltering my children. Cheers.
Well, it's refreshing to talk to someone who is passionate and sensible. I don't get that often, so I appreciate that, Joe. This has been fascinating listening to you, and so now I've actually lost track. Did you finish your explanation, your path of explanation to us from America to
Ah,
Russia?
oh yeah, from America. All right. So yeah, I'll cut to the quick. W- I came in February of 2023 to check it out. See it for myself. Didn't want to just take the family to Russia without ever having been there myself. I mean, I was born at night, just not last night. So checked it out. And then I came back and I talked with my wife, and she said, "Oh yeah, this sounds really really good. Um, let's start the motions." After a little while, we're getting a little tired out. We're coming to terms with the fact that we have to sell everything that we own because it's too expensive to ship it over here and all this jazz. And you're waning a little bit, and
It's a good
then
point.
the laws started rolling out. About these new laws in what 6 states in 6 months. I'll be very careful how I say this, Joseph, but let's just say that children who were confused were it was made the law. I think it's a statement of fact. It's made a law that children 5 and older can choose who they're going to be, and I don't mean a firefighter or a
Mhm,
nurse, but they
mhm.
could just choose what they wanted to be without the permission of their parents. Not that that makes it any better, but I mean, there's at least a gate there. No, literally, without the permission of the parents, your teacher, can talk with you and drive you down to the hospital and, make whatever needs to have happened in their minds happen. Um, that 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 was just okay. All right, we're out of here, and everybody's like, "Well, that will never happen in Missouri. It's a red state. It's one of the most conservative, if not the most conservative state in the U.S." And of course, our AG, who's actually a pretty good guy, got involved, and he's like, "We're going to make sure that this never gets passed here." And then the federal judge in Missouri overturned it immediately. And so
Mm,
immediately from 6 liberal states, it comes right to the heart of America and literally gets overturned right there. So this is how they get this stuff through. This is how they've done this before with several other problems that we have in America right now. And look, I'm finished losing. I'm
mhm,
finished losing. I'm finished not just thinking that we just have to hunker down and me shelter my children for the rest of my life and not and not being able to protect them. I mean, think about what this is going to mean in 20 or 30 years. With what they're normalizing now, they have a huge laundry list of more things that they want to normalize. The
mhm,
things that we used to complain about 20 years ago, you can't talk about these things anymore. We can't talk about them right now.
mhm,
I can as soon as I get off of this live stream. But
mhm,
that's an incredible thing, really, if you think about it. That I am talking, like we said, on this Western platform, and I literally get to leave this chair and go speak my mind. I could shout it out
mhm.
my front door, and nobody would give a darn.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Yeah.
No, you are absolutely right, Joe. And again, it's great to hear your passion. That you're tired of losing, and I understand how you feel, and I'm glad you're sharing it for the world to hear and those who are listening to understand. You're living in America, and you're voting, and you're voting, and you're voting, and a Russian even said, you guys have the Second Amendment, but it really doesn't mean anything anymore. And I was like, yeah, you're right, because we have enough sugar and air conditioning. we're not going to get off our butts and do anything about it, you know? And I'm not calling for anything violent to happen, just to be clear. But yeah, I mean, if you know, you and I are Christians first, and then we're fathers second, I would say. Well, I guess spouses and then fathers third. But it is very important. What we have left before we die is to raise our children. And, you know, I'm not going to sacrifice my children for America, you know. I mean, I
Absolutely.
love America. I want America to do well, but I can't wait 50 years for America to get better. You know, I have kids to raise now. I am a Christian now. I will be dead in less than 30 years. Statistically, I've got kids to grow up and raise at this point in life. They can't wait. I cannot wait for DC to stop messing around. I cannot wait for adults to be in charge again. I don't have time, and neither do you,
Hmm.
and neither do a
Yeah.
lot of people. So,
Yeah. No,
wow.
people talk about this in relation to all sorts of things, right? You think about like, you have good kids and you send them to a private school and then you're like, yeah, this isn't really working out with this school. This school is having a bad effect on my child. And you take them out and then the principal's like, no, we need your kids to come here and make it a better school. Yeah, I love this constant comparison that is being made that you have good apples and you're going to throw them in a barrel of rotten apples and somehow all of those rotten apples are going to become bright green, fresh apples. No, it's like, no, it works literally the complete opposite of that. If you're, and it doesn't matter if you stick one rotten apple in with a bunch of good apples or put one good apple in with a bunch of rotten apples, everything becomes rotten. That's just a reality. And like you said, we're not called as fathers of families by God to sacrifice our children for the betterment of a country. Now, you want to talk about sacrifice like going and dying for a good country. Okay, that's something altogether. No, but to make them, to give them the opportunity to become enemies of God, that is not our role at all. We're supposed to create friends of God, sons of God, daughters of God. That's what we're called to do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And hopefully you and I have found a country and other peoples are finding a country that, you know, supports religion and supports Christianity where this can happen and things can be normal and people can grow up with a head screwed on their shoulders correctly. So we're close to the halfway point, and I got to be sure to get to some audience questions. But before we do, I want to make sure we kind of like have some general idea of what you're saying. So you left because one, this is what I'm getting from you. DC was targeting your denomination, and two, you were concerned about the state's role in giving children authority to go straight to the public school system and request radical changes to who they are. Is it those two things, would you say, or is it more than that?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely more things involved with that, and there's just a laundry list, and I think everybody could come up with their laundry list. But those are two of the biggest
The two big things,
reasons. Yeah,
right? Right. So, what is the name of your denomination that, in case people want to look you up, that DC was targeting?
yeah. So you just want to look up. Well, we are RTCs. We have been labeled radical traditional Catholics. So we kind of like got a little like cherry on top, like a radical on top. Uh,
It sounds like a name to be proud of, Joe.
Absolutely. No, we love it. And you didn't even have to do anything for it. That was the best part. I mean, it was like a participation trophy. Like we won a contest that we didn't even know we were like playing in. No, it was really sweet. No, you look up traditional Catholic Latin Mass on Google. You can find it all over the place. There are several like priestly fraternities that exist out there. The SSPX being the largest, the Society of St. Pius X. Yeah, I don't know if anybody's concerned about like search history and stuff like that. So, that is directly named in the that particular organization was precisely named in the FBI leaked documents. And I can share a link with you, Joseph, afterwards if you want to put it in the description of the actual FBI documents. So if people are wondering about that.
Yeah,
People have a
I
hard time
might.
believing that sometimes.
I might. The only reason I wouldn't, and I very well might not, is because of the algorithm coming after us. So
Also true.
the
Yeah, there you go.
viewers might have to be smart and just hear what we're saying and look it up on
Yeah.
their own.
Maybe just
Um,
type, it'll be easier to talk about Jim Jordan and traditional Catholics. You search those terms and you will get official documents from the House committee on this topic. Yeah, and him, slapping Chris Ray over the wrist about this whole thing. But yeah, that's,
so crazy.
yeah,
So crazy.
absolutely nuts.
I mean, because I mean, my wife and I, we're part of a church that is what's called the International Church of Christ. And the idea is just to try to find out by reading only the Bible what was the first century church trying to do and what does God want from us as people to do, and to try to, like you said, get back to the basics. And it sounds like you're part of a Catholic church that's trying to go back to the basics as best it can, and perhaps that made you guys a vital, strong movement, and DC didn't like that, because some government people, they like agnostics and atheists because that way they can be the father, as opposed
Hmm.
to being a part of a church where God is their father. Um, so that's my suspicion. And as far as your other reason for leaving, that the government is giving kids authority, basically, is what I would call it. To circumvent their parents and to go straight to the public school and talk to some 33-year-old person who's also mentally ill, perhaps, and make radical changes.
Hmm.
It's crazy, because kids are kids for a reason. They are minors. Their brains are not fully developed till that we now know 25. So, we need to respect the parents' role to make decisions for them. And in these countries that are leaning away from traditional family values, if we are allowing the government the power to give our children authority that they're not ready yet to have, I mean, that is crazy. And that was in the back of my mind when I moved. I've told people I wasn't fleeing America because when I left, I hadn't yet woken up fully to how bad it was. I was more coming here for other reasons. But
Hmm.
it was in the back of my mind, the state is now allowing this, giving kids this authority. And I feel good about my 5 kids, but even I can have a hard time sometimes. We all can have a hard time. And I don't want my kids to have that authority. That's ridiculous,
Yep.
that they could call the police on me and lie about me. This is just insane, you know?
Yeah.
Um, wow.
Well, yeah, and you can tell. We used to think pretty strongly about this in America, but when the government
Mhm.
becomes daddy or daddy and mommy, right? They're your parents directly, and they take the parents out of that leadership role. I mean, we are the basic brick of society, right? The family. We Society is built of these bricks. You can't build
Mhm.
society without those bricks, and those bricks
Mhm.
have to be integral, well cast, strong bricks for that building to continue to exist. And when the government wants to take the layer of parenting out of society, we've seen this has happened to another great country once upon a time. And we used to speak very strongly about that in America. And now it is happening to America. And the hypocrisy is really stunning, really stunning. How fiercely we used to defend these so called American principles against
Mhm.
other countries. And now we're doing it ourselves. And now people like us who still remember that are the traitors.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
worth
Mhm.
considering.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, one more thing for me, and then we're going to go to the audience. So thanks for your patience, guys. And that is, you're now in Russia, and you are still a practicing Catholic. So some people are now thinking and curious, what kind of religion options are there for them if they were to move here? What is your status now, Joe?
Sure. So in all of Russia, um, as far as Catholics who consider themselves still in unity with the Catholic Church underneath the chair of Peter, there is one Latin Mass in Russia that meets that description. It is said by the only traditional Russian Catholic priest that I am aware of in the world. We're not, again, like I said, a huge community of people globally, even. But yes, there's just a few of us here in Moscow. So it's a small little congregation, but we still have our Mass and our liturgy and our sacraments here. And so that is what we are involved with right now. We are looking to expand to a larger space because we are, even in the little tiny space with a tiny congregation, we're still packing that place. So we know that we will be in much better position when we can find a better, bigger place to move into. So that is where we are at right now. But we have several friends, very good friends now that we know there at the church, and we have access to our sacrament. So we would not have been able to move to Russia had that place not existed.
Huh. Is this a Latin Mass church or no?
So it is a Latin Mass community. And
Okay.
yes, so we say the Mass in Latin, or the priest says the Mass in Latin. We also we will go to any traditional Catholic liturgies that exist. So we also go to the Armenian liturgy, which is a traditional liturgy at the Polish cathedral downtown. It's important to call out, as far as Catholics are concerned, Catholics are perfectly free here in Russia. I've had people ask me, is Catholicism actually like legal in Russia? I mean, I think it's a really funny question when you see some of the churches that exist here in Russia. But yes, people are perfectly free to practice their religion, with few exceptions, I think, in Russia. And I think most people who would look at those that are forbidden, we would, as Christians, all be on the same page about those should not be allowed to be practiced. So
Okay. Right. So there are three Catholic churches in Moscow, but there's only one that is part of the denomination that you would have moved for. Is that the idea?
technically, I think there are 3 or 4 Catholic churches, and we don't have our Mass in any one of them. We don't actually have our Mass in a church. We
Oh,
have
okay.
our Mass in a small room in a basement. So it is very Spartan.
Oh, okay. Okay. All
Yeah,
right. So it's like a house church that you guys go to.
for all intents and purposes, yes.
So roughly how many people? I'm just curious.
Oh, depends. There are some people who come and go, but I would say probably all in all, probably 40, 50 people altogether.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Is it kind of an
Very, very
international?
different from, sorry?
Is it an international group or is it mostly Russians?
It's a very international group. There are definitely Russians there. Actually, historically, Catholics have a strong history here in Russia. Catherine the Great, as an example, reached out to the West specifically to have Catholic priests brought here to Russia. Orthodox priests have studied in Catholic seminaries in the West, etc. So there is a tradition of Russian Catholics in Russia, but not there are very few, relatively speaking. Now, I think the total Catholic population of Russia is about 1%, or maybe just shy of 1%.
Huh.
But so it's very small right now.
Okay. Well, that's interesting to know because I think a lot of people outside of Russia, they think of Russia and they think atheist or they think Orthodox. And so you're saying that Catherine the Great, one of the leaders of Russia, actually was trying to grow the Catholic population in Russia. Is that right?
That's correct.
Why was she trying to do that? I'm just curious.
That is a very good question that I do not yet have an answer for. I was watching this and actually speaking with some historians on matter. And I always do get myself into trouble, just for the record, for trying to talk about Russian history as a new to Russia immigrant. So I will refrain from conjecture on
No
that
worries,
topic.
Joe. You don't have to know everything. I mean, I certainly don't. I have guests on for that. So, oh, and you're my guest, so maybe you do have to know everything. But anyway, all right, cool. So we'll try and rip through some of these audience questions, and I have more questions I may or may not get to. It's nice though to have so much to talk about. We can't fit it all into the block. But here's the first question: are you able to answer this or not, Joe? Do you support abortion like the Pope does? What do you say to that? You can pass if you don't want to answer. Don't be afraid to avoid questions.
I would just say that I have number 7 on the way, and so I would certainly say that that is a negative, Houston. I do
Okay.
not. In fact, the Pope does not. There's very little, in fact, that the Pope and us agree with. Yeah.
So tell me, because I don't know, does the Pope support abortions?
Um, I I cannot remember a specific quote in which the Pope actually supports abortion. It's an unfortunate reality inside the Catholic Church hierarchy that modernists tend to speak in very slippery language so that they cannot get nailed down on whether or not they agree or disagree on a point. Of course, which is completely different than how Christ himself acted. And so it is very unchristian thing to do. We let our yeses mean yes and our no means no. So abortion is a really, really unfortunate reality that people engage in today's world or all around the world. And Russia, I think it's worth saying, is not an exception to that. So it's something that I think that they should get over personally, because I believe that it is the murder of innocence.
Okay. Well, here's something you can say yes or no to, and hopefully I have no idea what this word is, so hopefully I'm not putting something very inappropriate on the screen. Are you, Joe? Do you
Well,
know what it means? Again,
yes, I
pass.
do. I do know what it
Oh,
means. I know what it
pass.
means very well.
Okay.
I think we've all been sedevacantists at some point in our lifetime, as far as Catholics are concerned. Are you familiar with this term, Joseph?
No, I have no idea what they're
Okay.
talking about.
It's a Latin term. It means the seat is vacant, or it's a coined term, English term, sedevacantis, but it's literally sedes, supposed to say sedes vacantis. So
Uh-huh.
the seat is vacant, and so there are people who are traditional Catholics who believe that the seat is currently vacant because the Pope cannot say what he has said and still be the Pope. And so, therefore, he is
Ah,
no longer the Pope because he has called himself into formal heresy. Um, I will be very specific when I respond to this and say, I do not know whether or not, or I will not. It's a better way of saying this. The best way to say this is that I do not believe that I am competent to say that that Francis is not in the chair of Peter, but he certainly is a heretic. There's no doubt about that. He is speaking directly against Catholic Church teaching, and whether or not that is conscious or not conscious, he is speaking against what the Catholic Church teaches, what the Christian faith teaches. I mean, like, this is pretty obvious stuff, right? And that he is not acting in a Christian way. In fact, the leader of this country that I now live in 2013, went and visited Pope Francis, and he came back and said, "This man is not a Christian," and I happen to agree with him on that.
hmm. Okay, okay. So define for the agnostics what a heretic is.
So a heretic is definitely a Christian term that is only means that you do not believe in one or more tenets of the Christian faith. Of course, it's a very, very, very debatable topic, what that means. And you would have to go through 2,000 years of Christian history, which we won't do today. But that is what a heretic is. I mean, you could be, I can be a heretic quite easily. In fact, I'm sure that I have been a heretic at some point in my life by something that I have said merely that is untrue. You could be a material heretic. You don't have to be a formal heretic. And this is where the debate about whether or not Pope Francis is actually the Pope. And honestly, it has zero bearing on what I believe, whether or not Pope Francis is the Pope, because he's wrong. And I don't know how to square that circle. So I just don't need to get into that. But that's what a heretic means.
Okay, so you heard it here first, guys. Joe said Pope Francis is like Emperor Palpatine sitting on the throne.
Thank you for so succinctly putting it the way that it's supposed to be said. Oh my.
So we got a donation, 30 something from Sebastian Wirtz. And I think that might be one of your buddies. Because I think you have rigged this to be on your channel as well at some point. I see the paperclip over it, which I think means it's private on your channel for now. But someone gave a donation anyway, so thanks for giving a donation. So as I scan for the next question, Joe, I have a question, and that is, what do you like about Russia? Maybe you can be a little bit deep, and maybe you can be a little bit shallow in your answer.
Sure. Let's try for both. I did a video on my channel when I talked about patriotism.
And his channel, by the way, guys, since he said it, look at his name. It says "At Home in Russia." Oh, it's in the title and it's in the description as well. But be sure and look him up after this. But go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of did I was getting a little philosophical with the virtue of patriotism, describing about how I can sense this patriotism being different than the patriotism that we experience from fellow Americans in America. And you can go very, 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 very deep into that. But I think the best thing about Russia are the people, for sure. I pretty quickly coined, I've only been here in the winter and the fall. So it's been pretty cool the entire time that I've been here, both the time I visited and when I lived here. But they are the warmest people in the coldest country. Russians, like I said, they're a tribe. You really feel like you are part of a family here. This is not like being in America. We're all rallying behind like the Constitution, and not so many people are doing that anymore, even then. But when you're in Russia, you break that barrier with the Russian people, and they welcome you into their country. You feel like you are part of the family, and in a way that you will never feel like with your fellow brothers and sisters in America, as an example, in my opinion. And I really, really like that about Russia. I love the fact that the government, even the government, is focused on these traditional values. I think there's a lot that needs to be hashed out about what that means more clearly, but people want this tradition back, and they're working on it actively. I think that is really the main difference about being here, is you feel that you are actually going in the opposite direction of where America is going right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and some people will criticize, and they'll say, when you look at the abortion stats in America and Russia, when you look at violence in America and Russia, they're similar. Of course, the violence in Russia is like domestic violence, whereas in America, it's more like on the street. I'm generalizing big time, but people will say, there's not much difference. But I think, a big help is that the Russian government is literally pushing traditional family values and literally supporting their historical Eastern Christianity, which is Christianity for this part of the world, which is Orthodoxy. And I'm not Orthodox because I wasn't reached out to by Orthodox, and there's not a huge Orthodox church in America. I'm just a Christian that goes to like an evangelical, I guess you could say, or Protestant movement. But I'm a guest here. I'm not here to be against the Orthodox Church at all. I'm not. I have no passion for debating between one Jesus believer and another. It's just not, doesn't interest me at all. And so I'm very happy to live in a quote Jesus believing, country. And I think that helps big time that you have one country that is pushing traditional family values and Christian religion, and you have another country that is pushing anti-traditional family values and no religion. I think that makes a big difference. And that's why I say one country is leaning this way and one country is leaning the other way, because I know statistically you might not be able to find much of a difference between the two places yet. So I put another question on the screen here from the audience. What type of jobs are available in Russia for American men with families? You have an answer for them, Joe, or no?
There are, that is the literal $1 million question, I think. I think that this is a lot of where there is the surviving and not surviving in Russia thing. I mean, it's very commonsensical, but it is the question that gets asked less frequently, I think, than many other questions. There are definitely jobs that are available. And in fact, I just got a job offer last week, a very good job offer for here. For background, I'm not going to get into what it is that I'm making here because it has to be too much to be explained with, dollars and rubles and cost of living and all that sort of stuff. But just for context, I am used to making about $170,000 a year back in the States. I am living quite comfortably on a heck of a lot less than what I was living on in the States. I'm not putting away, as much money as I was putting away back in the States. I mean, I was working for Red Hat, had a great IT job, and I was living in the middle of the country. I wasn't living in the city. But now what this job that I'm going to have, we are going to continue to exist here in Russia without my children having any awareness that the life is changing, whether or not that's our food, that's our living, whatever. I live in a decent sized house with on 2 acres, just over 2 acres, 2.25 acres. That's fully fenced in a very convenient location. I have got 3 grocery stores that are within a few minutes walking distance. I mean, I really have a great setup where I'm at right now. And then with this job that I'm going to get, it's an IT job. I'm an IT program manager by trade. I've worked for Microsoft, I've worked for Red Hat, I've worked for Oracle, I've worked for Sprint, now T-Mobile. There are transferable, there are job analogs over here. I think it's important for people to remember that it wasn't but a few years ago that there were a lot of English speaking people here working jobs here for Western and Eastern companies. Now, we've obviously that situation has changed, but the language of trade is still very English. And so if my recommendation for people looking for jobs is looking for companies that have international relations, which there are a lot of. But I will say on the other side that I was thinking that I was just going to work a remote job in America and when I moved here. And that did not happen at all. The job market went completely off the cliff, despite the fact that supposedly there were millions of new jobs being created. For some reason, I couldn't actually speak with recruiters that were actually had jobs to offer. And so it really dried up for me. And I thought, okay, well, I'll figure it out when I get over there. And then I was still interviewing, well, not trying to get interviews for jobs. Like I was never been unemployed for this long period of time. Uh, but I wasn't able to even get interviews, and I've worked for big companies. I have a great resume. I have great experience, and that's never been a problem for me until till now. Um, and then I just started networking when I got over here. You've got to, if you're going to come over here, there's a lot of faith that goes into it. But then you've got to hit the ground running as soon as you get here and like start meeting people, start connecting with people, joining expat groups and whatnot. It was extremely intimidating when I got here. Again, thinking in the back of my mind that I'm going to have an American job. Finally, this isn't actually panning out. So I started have to networking with people and talking with people about what they do. And there's a full range of jobs, but I know that I'm kind of, I'm sorry, talking about a lot of different things here, but I'll close it up to say there are definitely jobs here, but you've got to be, you can't really be proactive because nobody really wants to talk to you about a job that you might have when you maybe get here. Don't try that. But if you have a solid resume or you are, an investor or an entrepreneur, or you just are interested in teaching English, then there are definitely opportunities for you.
Right. I agree. I agree. I mean, the number one job is probably English teacher or tutor, and then number two I've heard is like the media. So a lot of people come over here and they work for different TV channels and things like that because this is an international medium as well. And so you Russians might be surprised how many English speakers are behind the scenes in all these channels that are over here. And then, like you said, I think IT is a big deal because IT is also kind of international. And it's something that, in my opinion, Russians should be offended by that it's English because English is a simple language, guys. That's why it's one of the reasons why it works well as an international language. It's very easy. And most people, whatever language they speak, they can speak English fairly easy as a second language. And
but also
whatever.
it's a good opportunity getting a job in Russia for a Russian company, and I'd rather actually work even for proportionately less money for a Russian company because you can actually say what you think because you're around Russians, which is huge, and it has a mental. It's impactful to your morale. When you're, especially in IT, being a very liberal sector, it's really fantastic. But also, this is going to be a great opportunity for you working at a Russian company to learn Russian, because of course you should definitely be trying to learn Russian if you're thinking about moving to Russia. I found that it was much easier to start learning Russian when I got to Russia, but I want to practice that Russian, and what better place to do that than the workplace? So I think people should definitely have that in front of their minds, regardless of your speed of learning, that Russian has got to be learned eventually.
Yes, it has. And you and I will, it in some ways will never be Russian because we spent so much time in another country. We can be respectful of Russia and we can try our best to be Russian and we can learn the language for sure. But we'll always be immigrants, and our kids will be 50 to 75% Russian, and then their kids will be completely Russian. You have to learn Russian in school. So, immigrants that come over here, if they are law abiding and they appreciate Russian culture and their heart is to blend in, it's absolutely going to add to the country and be beneficial long term. I fully believe that. These things take time to change, and Russia needs people. So I think that Westerners that want to come should come. If you're not raising minors, I understand you could definitely. I wouldn't argue with you that maybe people who aren't raising minors should stay and try to improve America. But if you're raising minors, I think you need to come for sure. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't come if you aren't raising minors. I can understand why people would argue that. So we have another donation of $10. I want to recognize Amar 350Z, and I think you have given us donations before, so we appreciate it. Greetings from Kansas City. I don't have a question, but want to show my support. Keep up the amazing work, guys. And I agree, family first, Amar. Now, here's another question for you, for us, Joe. I want to see how you answer it. I already know. I've answered this question before, I think. What do you say to this, sir? Someone has found us out. Are you worried your kids will be conscripted up in Russia, though?
Yeah, I really do find it's very fascinating how many people think that it is. I was one of them. Okay, I had this. This is like a legit question, and I had
Yeah,
this
no, it
question
is. It is.
when I came. Right. Um, Unlike a neighboring country, first of all, I think we'll just kind of start from the top. From a neighboring country that actually does send kids to war, they don't do that here. So that's one. But as far as mandatory military service, I think that's definitely a thing in Russia, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
In your young adult years, if you're a male, you're going to be called to do 1 year of like basic training, and it's just 1 year, and that's it. And the people that have been called to serve on the front are people that have done more than 1 year. Now, when the SMO started and this machine started moving and people started getting called up, there were like two people, I think, that were accidentally taken up that had only done a year, something like that, and it got sorted out. It got fixed. Um, so if people want to be naysayers and they want to argue, they'll talk about those cases. But the reality is now, and except for a couple of mistakes, it is two separate things. All the young males serve for 1 year in their basic training service. And then people that have done more than that, they may or may not be asked to serve on the front. And I have young men that go to church with me, and they have done their service. And one even went to the front because he had to for whatever reason, and he didn't want to be like on the front. And so he was serving in some other capacity. So it's not like you come over here and, the worst thing is going to happen to you. But, you, you know, if you want to have a country that is good, that country has to be able to take care of itself. And there's a cost that has to be paid for that. And we all need to be willing to do whatever needs to be done. Hopefully, I didn't say too much there or offend
Yeah.
people.
You said conscription and you said Russia, just to be clear. So, but no, I think that you would be surprised at how many people are volunteering versus being pulled in. The comparison is quite different. But as far as expats are concerned, let's just say that at the very least, if you have a young family, like I do, my eldest is 7. That's definitely, and I have 3 girls at the top. Unlike other countries, you can't be conscripted if you're a woman. That's not a thing here. I know that is being sought to be changed. I don't know if that has in fact changed. I don't know if you know, Joseph, but I know that that's been a discussion back in America about conscripting women. That conversation is not on the table in this country.
Well, I mean, America doesn't. They don't. You grow up with like GI Joe cartoons and commercials. Be all you can be. So America, in our lifetimes, has not had an issue having as many volunteers as they want. Russia, I think, also doesn't have that issue now. They're paying well, and they're getting lots of people that want to volunteer. But I guess the general public here feels that it is good that all the males do their year of service because it helps them to be invested in their country. And I completely understand that idea. I also understand why some people might argue, well, my son's a nerd and he's sensitive and he's not like that, and I don't want him to serve at all. And there are some people that try to get, medical tickets for their children not to serve, and some people do get those medical tickets because for whatever reason they can't serve. So I mean, I guess my idea might be, if anyone cares or is asking, is I would have them choose between a year of military service or a year of uh, janitorial street working service, and either way we can get their sacrifice out of them, and if they're really sincere that they don't want to do military training, they can do something more humble and give back to the community in a different way. Um, but that's just my idea. Um, so we have another question here, which I found kind of interesting. I hadn't thought about it. If Russia was unavailable as an option, what other countries would you have considered moving to? Well, you're probably going to say there was no expat American channel in any other country, so I had no other ideas. Or no, I'm
That
kidding.
that is true. There were channels in Spanish that I was watching that were not about Russia. Yeah, no, we actually set a globe on a table, like an actual like we're homeschooled, right? So of course we have a globe, uh, and we just started spinning this globe and literally just being oh well, and just to be fair, my focus was originally leaving America. Was not started did not start with the premise of moving to Russia. So it was first just leaving America. And so we looked everywhere. In South America, definitely was one. In fact, a good friend of mine moved to Paraguay. Paraguay is a very interesting option. It's certainly a warmer option. Um, there are pros and cons with that, like there are pros and cons with moving to Russia. My wife and I, when we discussed moving to Russia, it was we did not want this to just be like this temporary thing or maybe even a longer term thing that like we will get our children into adulthood and then maybe we'll just check out what the world is like then. No, we wanted it to be a really firm generational change, like our children will be Russians. South America, I think, is a great option for like temporary, like, hey, we just need to kind of cover our head, for a few years. There are some interesting options in South America. If you think that this is a short-term problem, I think this is a long-term problem. I don't think it's going to get solved anytime soon. People are like, well, it may be safer, do we really think that South America is going to be like bombed or something like that? No, I think it is a more out of the way place. But I consider Russia to be a very safe place, and I want to take the side of, um, what a country that really believes in these traditional values, not just kind of being a pawn, I guess you'd say. Hope I didn't say
Now,
too much there either.
maybe I've been misled about South America, but the first thing that comes to mind is I think, well, is it safe on the street? And I also think, are the governments stable enough for me to trust raising my children there? So, what would you say to that? I'm genuinely
I th-
asking.
I think that there are some places that are actually pretty stable and have been stable for some time. Economically stable, well, yeah, that's a smorgasbord, really.
Mm.
Paraguay seems to be all right. Clearly, if you have a dollar, then that's going to go a long ways in most of those places. So governmentally, Paraguay seems to be pretty stable. But the really kind of the interesting part about Paraguay is that they are completely surrounded by total instability. And I think that there's a reason for that. Not that Paraguay is still around, but that may not last for a very long time. So
Mhm.
I think it's a valid temporary solution, but I'm not talking for like a lot of years even. Russia is very stable, it seems to me, and only going to become more stable in many different ways, including the whole BRICS situation. I mean, Russia is going to be front and center in this new economic development, while everybody else is kind of going off the economic cliff right now.
Yeah, and if you don't know what BRICS is, look it up, BRICS. and it contains 60% of the world's population, if I'm not mistaken. So we have now a sincere question on the screen. I say that because this is a regular subscriber, and I say it because this question might sound trolling, but this person is sincerely asking. So would I be considered a terrible parent because I don't believe in any religion? What would you say to that, Joe?
So you have history with this person, and if you say it's a genuine question, I believe you. And if it is in fact a genuine question, I think that genuinely that person knows that there is a problem here. The parenting children takes a lot of doing, and it takes a lot of belief if you're doing it well. It's something that you have to work very hard at. And if you do not have religion, which is a, shall we say, a more formal structure around the truth, what we believe to be the truth, like having a schedule for your family, right? Or, hey, we buy these things, or we buy those, brands. I'm not trying to lower the importance of religion in our family's life, but like everything that you surround with good parenting or include with good parenting, which is organized and a structure, that's what religion brings to yourself and brings to your family. And so, depending on what you mean by terrible parent, obviously I'm a traditional Catholic. I believe that everybody should be traditional Catholics, but Joseph is you Joseph are a Protestant, and we will have a difference of opinion on things. But as far as having religion, if you don't have a religion to at least give yourself some organization around the focus on the truth and your child going towards the truth, yeah, I think that you will. I depending on how you measure success, I think that you are not going to be successfully a good parent if you don't have any religion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say that you can be a good parent and not have religion, but I think that you will be acting out a Christian way of life even if you aren't meaning to. And so, if you are a good parent, it'll be on principles that are borrowed from religion anyway. And I understand, if you're not in the habit of going to church, not you, British Chef, but a person in general, and if they've had a hard time in life, maybe they've had some religious people that have done them wrong, and they've grown up in the 80s and 90s like we all have, and it's been cool to bash religion. It's very easy to just toss it aside and to just feel like you're going to be kind and you're going to do it on your own, but we're not really. We are all subconsciously acting out so many things that are from the Judeo-Christian world, and like I've said before, like Greek philosophy and German fairy tales. We're all acting this stuff out. So even if you say you're a total atheist, you're still enjoying watching Superman movies, and you're getting some sort of something from it, or you're reading German fairy tales to your kids, and you're feeling inspired by that, and you're subconsciously taking lessons from that. And just like a fairy tale, even if you don't believe in God, you could read the Bible in a Jordan Peterson style, and you can take great truths from it. But what's really cool that I think you might find out one day is that it's not just story-wise true and inspiring, but it actually is true. So yeah. Anyway, we are out of time. I'm sorry, guys. We have less than 30 seconds. I want you to go to this guy's channel and Be sure and subscribe and watch his shows. Don't forget to watch my shows as well. Click like, subscribe, and share. Joe, what do you want to tell us as the clock ticks down to 0?
I think that, as you say, the clock ticks down to 0. That is everybody really should look at their lives and remember that it is all clicking down to 0 for us, and to make the best decisions that you can make with the information that you have, and continue to grow in that knowledge and strive towards those goals. And I'm very blessed to know that that is where we are headed, and that we are just turning the chapter in this new life here in Russia and enjoying it tremendously, and just encourage other people to look at their options, especially where they are, and try to make the best decision you can make.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. Guys, don't forget about us. Watch our next video. Watch my new video tomorrow. And like I said, go to Joe's channel right now.
Thanks so much.